What is turnout? How much of it do we need? This is the topic of today's tutorial, and we're going to cover those basic facts about turnout, why it's necessary, when to use it, and how much of it you really need. Now, when I'm talking about turnout the way you would see in ballet. And it's an extreme version in ballet where you see the feet turning out so much that they go straight out to the side. Some people have naturally a large amount of turnout. Some people develop that amount of turnout through doing a lot of turnout exercises in ballet. But for the most part, we don't really need a lot of turnout to get advantage of using it in the dance. So why does it really exist? Functionally, turnout helps with balance. When we're thinking about stepping and being able to balance on that leg and holding our stability, it's a little bit easier to do that when your foot is turned out and you have a little bit of a wider base than if you were to stand straight ahead of you with the toes pointing straight ahead. So most dances will engage with the turnout at least a little bit. With tango, there's another reason for turnout, and that is tango is laid out on a circle. You are traveling in a circle with your partner. You are walking in a circle around your partner. So it's a very circular type of dance. Because you're doing that, you want to be prepared for going onto that circle and pivoting. So if I'm going to step and then pivot, I want to be ready for that. So I'll go ahead and turn out my foot and my knee in the direction that I will be going. And that's very helpful. So balance and then also the geometry of the steps really helps when you have turnout. Now, how much turnout do you actually need, and when is it not useful? There are different ways to find turnout for yourself, and today we're just going to run through a very simple exercise for you to get familiar with your own range. Now, let's go ahead and begin with standing with your feet hips width apart and toes parallel, pointing straight ahead. Find that position for yourself and then look down. And I want you to notice two things. One is one foot wanting to turn out more than other? That's very common and could be indicative of some tightness that goes up that leg. The second thing I want you to notice is how wide are your feet? When I say things like stand hips width apart, what does that mean to you? A lot of people will align their feet with their outer hips, thinking that that's really what it means to stand hips width apart. But what we are really talking about here is aligning with your hip joint. Where is your hip joint? Again, a lot of people will point to the outer contour of the hips, but in fact, your hip joints are somewhere else. To find them, take your hands, put them into a couple of fists right next to each other, put them in front of your pubic bone, and go ahead and roll out your hands until they land into your crease, your hip crease here, kind of in the middle. It's a little bit of a tender spot there. Usually it's a little ticklish if somebody were to touch you there. That's the spot where your hip joint is. So your femur bone, these big bones that are coming up, they actually kind of splay out a little bit and then they go in and attach to the pelvis through a ball and socket joint. So the socket fits inside the bowl of the joint and then has a lot of circular rotation. So to experience the range of motion in your joint, go ahead and step with your weight to one side. Let's make it right side. Then your left leg will just be kind of free, and I'm just lightly holding my weight on my toes there, and then turn your leg in and out. So this brings me to a very important point here. Your turnout is not something that happens in your feet or your knees. Definitely not the knees, because the knees are shaped very different. It's a very different type of joint. It's not meant to go sideways like the hip joint is. So your turnout is really dictated by the range in your hips. So see how much your leg is turning out and in, and this will be the range of motion that you can work with for yourself. Go ahead and switch to the other side. Now you're going to be on your left foot. And here, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to put my leg out and just gently turn it in and out, like I'm doing the twist. So this here will give you the range of motion on this side. So notice if this side is different from your other side. Most of the time it is, because we're not very symmetrical. All right, now let's put this in the context of both feet here. So with the feet hips width apart, I want you to bend and straighten your knees just a few times. And I want you to make sure that your knees are tracking straight ahead. Very often, if you look down, one knee will want to veer off to the side. So watch out for that and make sure that they're tracking straight ahead. And what we're looking for is an agreement between your knees and your feet, that they're going to be heading in the same direction. You always want the knees and the feet to be on the same page, because if the knee and the foot are not in agreement, usually one of them will suffer. All right, now remember that range of motion that you found. I want you to turn out your feet comfortably, so not a very big range. In fact, whatever your extreme furthest range is, do half of that. So it should feel very, very comfortable. Here we go. From here, bend and straighten the knees again a few times. And as you do that, now you want to watch for the knees tracking exactly over the toes, or if you see them turn in. So sometimes you see how this knee is starting to turn in. That happens quite a bit. So if that starts to happen, you need to reduce the amount of your turnout. So if this was not your possible range and you want to go further, you can turn out your feet a little bit more and then go ahead and do the plie exercise again. But once again, you want to watch, is the knee going to turn in? If the knee starts turning in when you bend, that means it's a little bit too much for you at this point. So let's do a few more here, simple plies, and get used to the sensation of your foot and knee tracking together. Good. And then go ahead and release, come back to center. So let's just do a little bit of practice for how you would align the leg with turnout for walking in tango. When you're going to do that, let's say we're going to work with a forward extension. You're going to put your weight into your standing leg, and already notice I'm using my turnout on the standing leg to help me balance. It's a little bit easier to balance when your foot is turned out because you have a bit of a wider surface area and a little bit of a wider base. So a little bit of turnout in your standing leg. From here, go ahead and reach out your free leg in front of you, and at first have it tracking straight ahead, so the knee is facing forward. And then maybe you take your hands for this. This is kind of a useful tactile feeling. Take your hands and turn your thigh out only to the point where it feels comfortable. So for me, it's about right here. Then go ahead and land your foot and split your weight between the legs. Look down and just feel whether this is something that feels comfortable. You want to be able to bend and straighten the legs very easily. Balancing should not be an issue. So if you're feeling a little bit shaky, you want to adapt. Maybe you need a little bit of a bigger space between the legs. Maybe the step needs to be a little bit shorter. So find a place where you can go, bend the knees, you can push back, you can push forward, and it feels very comfortable. So this will be your default natural range of your turnout. Come back and let's do the other side. I'll turn this direction now. So standing leg, a little bit of turnout to help you with balance. Reach out your free leg. First, just the knee and the foot pointing straight ahead, just to feel that. Take your hands, with your hands, turn your thigh out. Now the knee will be turning out a little bit. Place your foot, split weight, and check. Feel. You can bend the knees and straighten, and this should feel very comfortable. Adjust the length of the step and the width of the step if you're feeling wobbly. Good. You should be able to push forward and press back with ease, and then come back to center. So the one time that you don't want turnout to be in your walking gait is when you're not dancing. The thing that is so helpful when you dance for you to balance is not necessarily useful for normal walking. And this is something I did not learn until many years after starting tango. And I had to spend some time untraining myself. So if you usually tend to walk with your feet out, just know that a more efficient way and a more comfortable way for your body, the way it's meant to move, is actually with your feet and knees straight ahead. So something that you can start watching in yourself and paying attention. Usually one foot will turn out a little bit more than the other, so there's a little bit of time required to untrain those patterns. But something that's worthwhile, because it is only when we're walking with everything aligned correctly that we develop that longevity into our advanced years and not lose any of that mobility that we so enjoy from our joints. So that's a little bit of a crash course on turnout. Let me know what other questions you have, or if you have some comments, any tips that you found useful to work with your own turnout and finding ways to align your body. And make sure you tune in next week, because we're going to pick up where we're leaving off today, and we're going to look at some exercises where you can strengthen your feet and ankles so that you have even more ability to balance and stabilize while dancing. Thanks so much for joining me today. I'll see you next week. Have a good one. Ciao.